Welcome back to How I Got On Broadway. Today's guest is me, your host, Uchenna Agbu. Thank you so much to everyone who sent in questions for today's video. I figured I would just go through my journey a little bit, talk about all of that, and then go into a little Q&A at the end. I've got my notes here, so we're going to jump right into it. So a question I wanted to start with is, how did I start doing theater? Which I think is an interesting one because I actually did not start doing theater until I was in college. I didn't grow up with access to theater. I didn't grow up doing theater. Really, I went to Catholic school for most of my life, and we did like shows, but they weren't actually shows. They were like Catholic fun, like kids Catholic songs in a show form. So I really didn't know what musical theater was until I was in college or like late high school. I did a couple of shows when I was in high school, but I was really just kind of going where my friends were. So I didn't understand the concept of theater until I was in college, and I really decided to start exploring it. When I was a kid, I loved singing and writing, and I would do talent shows at my school. So that was kind of my introduction to the stage and live performance. But other than that, really no theater. When I was going into college, I was really curious about acting, and that was kind of my focus at the time. So that was my hope when I went into my first year of college. Wanted to explore being an actor, and I was very dead set on I'm going to be an actor. Obviously, that did not happen for great reasons. Acting is not for me, but that was my mindset going into college and how I kind of ended up where I am now. So I went to Rutgers. I graduated in 2024, and I was a theater BA. I had a double minor in creative writing and human resource management. So basically, how my major worked, it wasn't like an acting major. It was, honestly, sometimes I describe it as a theater history major because there really wasn't much practical work in theater that you could do. It's a very interesting curriculum, the way that they form it, and you kind of get to pick a lot of your own classes. So as I said, I started out wanting to be an actor. So I did like all of the acting classes I could, especially to start out. And then as time went on, I kind of saw that, I guess if you're an actor, if you were an actor, there were opportunities for you to take acting classes and learn that way. But if you were any other concentration, there wasn't much that you could do within the major. And so that's why I did a lot of student organized theater. There were three major theaters on campus, and I did all of them. So in student theater, as an extracurricular, I started stage managing, and that was really my introduction to theater administration, arts management. And from there, I kind of just tried everything that I could to gain more experience and learn more about the world, as I was kind of learning that maybe performing wasn't necessarily for me. Something interesting, well, I don't know if interesting is the right word, but something that I ran into during one of my first shows as a stage manager was kind of seeing how people within the space interacted, especially people who came from different backgrounds. And there was this one incident where I was doing a show, and one of the main actors in the show, came in one day with box braids, and that wasn't normally how she wore her hair. And it was such a topic of discussion. I was very confused because I wasn't used to, like, the school that I went to when I was younger was extremely diverse. I never really had to think about diversity and inclusion in that way when I was in like elementary school, middle school. It wasn't really until I got to high school that I had to start thinking about what I was seeing and what people were doing in these spaces. And the fact that it was such a conversation on whether she was going to have braids for the show, a friend of hers that was on staff saying, don't worry, I already talked to her about it. It triggered something in me that made me really want to help change that idea, help change the fact that her hair was something that could even be discussed. And from that point on, anytime I performed in a show at Rutgers, I always made sure to wear my hair in box braids, specifically because of that reason. I didn't care what show it was. I didn't care about anything. I was always with braids in my hair because after seeing, even in that small moment, it didn't seem like she cared that much, but I also didn't want it to feel normalized that people could dictate how you wear your hair in a college student theater show. Come on, why? So I think from that point, especially when I was in a management position, one, I learned a little bit about how much equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility meant to me, because that was my first opportunity to really have access to that kind of role. And then working with an actor who looked like me in that moment and seeing that and wanting to advocate for her, I feel like that really influenced my journey. And then I also really fell in love with arts management at that point, and I wanted to do more in leadership in theater rather than be on stage. I wanted to be part of the people behind the scenes making decisions and helping these people who are putting on the show. So, through exploring arts management and looking for community and representation, even within my small college theater community, really showed me that it was something that I really cared about, and arts management was something I really loved. So, another question that I got was, what was the moment you knew you wanted to pursue a career in theater? I guess I would probably say I knew for sure my junior year. So I ended up being the artistic director of a student theater on campus. I started my sophomore year, but it was like towards the end of my sophomore year. And my junior year was the 1 year where I did it for both semesters. And that was kind of where all of the work that I was doing the 2 years prior really came to fruition. And I got to artistic direct a full-scale season. Like we were saying also in the recent grads episode, at that time we did 10 shows in 2 semesters. They were all full scale. That included, I think, 2 musicals for sure, 2 plays, a special project, which a lot of the time ended up being a musical review, 2 play festivals, and 2 live comedies, sketch comedy shows. So those were 10 shows full scale that we did in 2 semesters, which looking back now, I don't know what I was drinking. I don't know how I was able to do all of that. I don't know how everyone else was able to do it, but somehow that was what we did. That was the culture, and it was great. I learned so much. I learned how to do basically everything. You know, since we were a student-run theater who really did not have a lot of support from the university, even when it came to allocations, like we didn't get that much. We were building our own sets. We were doing our own invoices for sound equipment. We were licensing these shows all on our own. Like we were doing it completely all on our own from the ground up. We were doing it all, which was, as hard as it was an incredible learning experience. And I think it's something that helped me so much understand the industry the way it is now. Now that I'm working in it, I really haven't run into anything that I feel unprepared for, which has been great. So overall, I would say challenges that I ran into in college would be, the difficulties of running a functioning theater was challenging, but in a good way, I would say. Crazy things happened at times, but it was what it was. Like I said before, the lack of practical application of the work within my major. And then also, just the fact that so much of it was do it yourself. Like if you weren't someone who was very self-motivated, innovative, ready to advocate for yourself, I could see that major kind of falling flat for you at the end of your 4 years. So a lot of personal work went into what you got out of the major once you graduated. And through all of this, like as I was artistic directing, producing, doing all of that within school, I was still working with outside organizations, finding places in New York, and like directing at community theaters and still building up my resume in that way as well. So it was a lot going on at once, but it was all to hopefully positively impact my career once I was out of school. So anyway, during the first semester of my senior year, I heard about the Cody Renard Richard Scholarship program and just decided to apply on a whim. I think I heard about it at like the last minute, and I applied at the last minute. That was in November of my senior year. And then during winter break in January, I think right before we were about to get back to school, I found out that I got it, which I wasn't expecting anything at all. But so basically the Cody Renard Richard Scholarship program works to bring students of color to the theater industry and give them the necessary resource and knowledge that they would need to enter the industry. I would say it's it's pretty career focused, and it really helps you find yourself as an artist or administrator, whatever it is that you do. And it wasn't just like a scholarship where they throw money at you and they're like, well, we'll see what happens. It was either a 5 or 6 month program where we did online seminars. We got to really connect with each other within the cohort. And at the end of the scholarship program, we have like a summit where all of the students come to New York City for a few days. I can't remember exactly how long it was. Maybe it was like 4 or 5 days. And we get to see shows. We got to network with industry professionals, do more seminars in person, and just learn so much. Like, I remember saying at the end of that program, it was more than I could have ever imagined. And I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about the industry that I didn't know and that I wasn't told in school. And it was incredible. So I was really lucky to be a part of that. So then after that, so in January, I had applied to an internship at Premier Stages. I applied to be the artistic literary intern for their summer internship program. And I found out that I got it in February. So before graduating, I had 2 things lined up. It was the CRR Scholarship Program Summit, and then I was going to go straight to that internship. Like if the summit was end of May, the internship started early June. So the whole time I was at that internship, I was applying for jobs like crazy, trying to get something full time for when I was done with the internship in August. And by July, during this internship, I had heard next to nothing. It was extremely hard, especially because I was just so used to always doing something and having something that was coming up, even if it wasn't a job, like always knowing what I was doing, especially as a college student. Like at the very least, you're doing school every semester, and I didn't have that, and I didn't have that kind of structure. So panic did kind of start to set in. At that point, I had signed a lease to move out of my house already, so I knew I had to get some kind of a job by the time I was leaving this internship. And honestly, I started to wonder for a little if I was getting like too ambitious with everything that I was doing and the kinds of things I was applying for, but I kept trying. So at the end of July, I got an email from Cody and the CRR Scholarship Program saying that a Broadway show was looking for a management fellow to join their team. And it sounded like it was pretty urgent. I said I was interested, and 3 days later, the stage manager of the show messaged me on LinkedIn asking for me to send in my resume. So the important thing to note with all of this is that the stage manager for this show, it was the revival of Our Town. The stage manager of this show was Cameron Jacobs, who was at the New York Summit for the CRR Scholarship Program, who I met. And when during my job search, I had connected with her on LinkedIn very early July, just saying, hi, it was so nice to meet you back in May. I would love to stay connected if there are any opportunities, blah, 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 blah. Networking. Using your relationships to help you. So later that month was when she messaged me. Like, she messaged me basically, like, in my head, I mean, I don't know what it was for her, but I feel like I was a familiar face. I was someone that she knew was part of the scholarship program that she came to speak at. And I had already taken the initiative to message her on LinkedIn. So my advice is make meaningful connections and keep your resume updated. I think that I sent my resume to her probably within 10 minutes of her asking for it. And I was confident that nothing on it looked crazy. There were no typos. It was ready, signed, sealed, delivered. So then August 1st, the general management company called me, and I got so nervous, I didn't even answer the first time that they called. And then the general manager texted me, I called, we had the conversation, and that was basically like my interview, and I was totally unprepared for it. I honestly, I did not think that the interview went well, and I just continued my job search because I think I was at a point where I was like, this is just going to be another, either a ghosting or it was just going to be a no. So I kept up with my job search. Days went by, I heard nothing. And then 5 days after that first phone call, I got another phone call, and they told me that I got the fellowship. That was August 6th. My first day was August 11th, doing prep work in the rehearsal studio. And then on August 12th, I was on that bus to Peterborough, New Hampshire with the whole company for our first table read that we did in New Hampshire. It was all very, very fast. It was all very unexpected. I'm really grateful, though. I would say that it was really a combination of luck, but also being prepared. I know I said I was unprepared for the interview, but I still think overall I said something that made them think that I was right for the job. And I know they interviewed other people. And I had my resume ready. I had done my little networking. I set myself up for success, basically. So that show was a limited run. It closed on January 19th, which meant I spent a lot of time, especially during the second half of that fellowship, looking for my next job, not knowing what it was going to be. So I was in the exact same situation that I was in July. And I was hearing back from next to no one. I was applying to everything I saw, and I was not hearing anything back. So I ended up being unemployed for 2 months, which I think that's short to some people, long to some others. For me, it was extremely challenging because, again, I didn't have that structure. I didn't have that idea of exactly what I was going to do every day, where I was going to go every day, knowing that I had some sort of a project to put my attention on. I didn't have that again, and this time it was for 2 whole months. And then one day I had like a light bulb moment, and I was like, I studied theater and human resource management in college. Why don't I reach out to the HR company that supported our town while I was there? It just one day randomly popped into my head. It was a complete shot in the dark. I sent them a cold email. I explained who I was, where I knew them from, what I was looking for, and I was like, do you have any possible opportunities? Because I'd be really interested. They got back to me the next day to have a conversation, and honestly, guys, the rest is history. I did 3 interviews. I got the offer in late February, and I started in mid-March. And it's been a really great experience working with them. The company I work for is called K+K Reset. And we're an HR consultant that works on a lot of Broadway shows, national tours. We work in GM offices, a whole bunch of stuff. It's been a really great experience, and I feel so lucky to be able to use everything that I studied while I was in school in the work that I do every day. And what's so special about the company that I work for is that I also get to see real change basically every day. Like, I get to see what we do actually have an impact on people. We function as a people and culture team and also an equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility team. So all issues related to that, we do our work to help make people's lives better in that aspect. And we literally get to see it, and it's really amazing. So my advice would be also put yourself out there. You never know what's going to happen. You never know what might be the right thing for you. And really think about the places you've been. Think about the people you've met and what you've seen, and think about what you want to do in relation to that, because you never know who might be able to help you get to the thing that you want to do. I should have touched on this more before, but also in the midst of everything that I just said, I was still freelancing as a director, as a stage manager. Recently, I've been freelancing as a company manager. So that's also just like putting yourself out there in multiple places, learning all of the skills that you possibly can, especially because a lot of these skills are transferable. Doing all of that makes you a stronger candidate in any situation you might be in. So another question I got was, how has your experience with human resource management reshaped your perspective as a creative and vice versa? I would say really more honing my leadership skills as someone who is an artist and is a creative has been really helpful, and being able to see what a leader needs to be, and soft skills and hard skills. They're both very, very important, and being able to transfer that to my work as an artist has been really important. And because I've seen really talented artists and creatives who just unfortunately do not have the leadership skills they need to be in a position, especially on a Broadway show or any theatrical production, to lead a team of people. I think it's 2 different skill sets, and great artists hopefully can learn to have both. And then on the flip side of that, with a creative mindset, using that as an HR professional has also been very interesting, because I think I bring a unique perspective regarding what creatives are feeling and thinking and experiencing when they're working on these productions, what their frustrations might be, all things like that. And I get to use my HR brain and be like, okay, this is what they're experiencing. This is what I would do if I were in that position, all of that. So it's been very helpful on both sides. And then another thing I would say has been like seeing common mistakes that people working on these shows at such a large scale are making. Not to say that I won't make mistakes if and when I finally get to that position, but I feel like seeing the mistakes is helping me know, okay, if I ever run into this, this is maybe what not to do. And that's been really cool too. So yeah, I've been at my job since March. I ended up moving to the city in May. And yeah, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Okay, moving into the Q&A section, just answering anything that I didn't cover in that whole little thing. Okay, first question, what show made you love theater? This, for whatever reason, is a hard question for me. I would say like my gateway shows were Dear Evan Hansen, Hamilton, Waitress. Very specifically, my gateway into theater and what made me love it was, and I know we've all seen it, the performance of Jeremy Jordan singing She Used to Be Mine at MCC's Miscast. The impact that video has had on my career, nobody will ever understand it. It should be studied. It should be studied because it changed everything for me. And I know it sounds like I'm joking, but literally that video is like, if I really had to name a reason why I decided to do theater, that video would be up there. But then also as a director, shows that have really impacted me, the revival of Top Dog Underdog, which was directed by Kenny Leon. So it was kind of a full circle moment for me because when I saw that show, it wasn't the first show I saw on Broadway, and it wasn't the first show that I ever spent my money on, but it was one of the first that I ever spent my money on. And it was the first time I saw a show that made me really, really want to understand directing. It made me love, I fell in love with directing watching that show because at that point I knew more about theater, and I saw how much work it took to do what they did on that stage, and it just, I don't know, it like tickled my brain and made me extremely interested in directing. And I do credit that show for being why I direct. One of my first Broadway shows was also the revival of Company. I got to see it for a class, and then I ended up directing a production of Company as my senior thesis. So I feel like that was also a full circle moment for me. So those are some shows that have had like a really big impact on me. And my favorite musical theater song of all time, this is a fun question. I think very easily Chant from Hadestown. What about theater inspires you the most? What inspires me the most about theater, I feel like this is so many people's answers, but the art of collaboration. It is the most collaborative industry that you'll ever run into, and collaboration is necessary in order to get the end result. And I just really love the idea of everyone working towards a common goal, which it's really hard to do. And I'm sure collaboration is necessary in most jobs, every job. But the way it works in theater is if we are not working together, it shows. And I think it's beautiful because we can see people really work together and choose to do so very intentionally every day. Something you did in college or pre-professionally that helped you build experience. Definitely student theater, like I was talking about before. Something interesting that I didn't even know when I was doing it was either my sophomore year or junior year, I directed a production of The Niceties at a community theater in New Jersey. And if you don't know the show, it is a two-hander. It's a two-person play between a college professor and her student. So I didn't think of it as a challenge at the time, but once I got deeper into it and now looking back, I realized I was directing someone a lot older than me, someone in probably their 60s. The character was in their 60s, and a peer. Who was actually my best friend. I was used to directing my peers because of student theater, but I did not think about the challenges I might run into directing someone older than me. So I would say if you ever get the opportunity, expose yourself to different kinds of people different generations, I think is really helpful. I think that set me up really well for what I'm doing now, especially because as someone who works in HR, it can be really interesting. Even before, when I was doing our town, I was the youngest person there. I'm the youngest person at my job now. I'm usually the youngest person in all the rooms I walk into, unless we're doing like a show with kids. Um, and I do have a level of authority in these spaces, but it's hard to feel that way sometimes because I am 23. Most people look at me and they're like, "Oh my God, she just graduated college." Which, yeah, I graduated college a couple years ago, but I'm also here to do this job, and that's what it is. So I would say I'm trying my best to continue to close generational gaps and learning how to, even outside of generational things, age things, learning how to work with different people is really, really important. And that really helped me. What inspired you to start the podcast? A lot of things inspired me to start this podcast. I would say most of all, just looking at the lack of access to theater, including the lack of access that I experienced growing up. Like I was saying before, not knowing what theater was, not being able to travel a short distance to experience theater as a kid. Um, and then once I started doing it and trying to figure out how I could make it a career, also just seeing the lack of transparency and seeing that there were a lot of things that are being gatekept and not understanding how I would make it a career, how I would even get that first job, getting to those points. So that really inspired me to start the podcast. I just hope that it can be an additional resource for people who are interested in getting involved and maybe making a career out of this. Um, yeah, I, I've been saying this so much lately, but I'm someone who has a passion for theater education, and I was a teaching artist at one point, but I'm starting to realize I don't think I'm really that great of a teacher. So I've been kind of using that passion to find different ways to give education and put this out there for people to be more knowledgeable. And that's why also we have the blog that's part of the podcast. Like it reflects on it and it's like a cute little blog post, but also at the bottom of each blog we have like a resources section that leads you to things you can read about, learn about. Will link directly to programs that were mentioned. So yeah, that's why I started the podcast. I want it to be an educational resource because it's something I wish I had when I was in college, even when I started working. What has been the best surprise with launching the podcast and the biggest challenge? Challenge wise, I would say honestly the technical aspects. Um I was saying this to someone the other day, like I don't think I don't think I knew how to use a computer. I don't think I knew how to use a computer before I had to start learning how to edit and do everything for this podcast. I thought I knew how to use a computer, but I had to learn just a whole new set of skills. One, to produce the podcast, to market it, to edit, to do all of the technical things, especially. It was a learning curve for sure, but now I won't say I'm an expert, but I've learned enough to be able to put this out. So I'm glad that I've been able to do that. And then what's been the most surprising? I think going off of that with all of the technical skills that we've all had to learn, everyone on the team, I'm really surprised in a good way with how everything came out and how we got it to happen, especially in under 6 months. Like this podcast wasn't an idea until I think like July of this year. And we didn't have a full team until probably sometime in September. So in less than 6 months, we were able to put together like a fully functioning production, audio and video, putting it on all these platforms and all of that. So I'm really proud of us for what we've achieved in what I think is a short time. And I'm surprised because when I had this idea, I had no idea where it would go. I had no idea if it would even come to fruition. And to see everything that we have accomplished has been really cool to see. Biggest lessons that I've learned over the years. I think the biggest lessons I've learned have been one, if you don't believe in yourself, you cannot expect other people to believe in you. I was also talking about this recently. I I was told no a lot and in a lot of different ways. In undergrad, I was kind of told the possibility of making it in this industry were very slim, that it takes a lot of luck, it takes a lot of this, it takes a lot of that. But I believed in myself and I did it, and here I am. And I'm still learning and I still have a lot that I want to achieve. But I think even what I've done so far, I'm truly proud of myself and I'm really happy about where I am. And then going on that, closed mouths don't get fed. I used to think that was such a harsh saying, but it's really true. Like, you have to advocate for yourself for the things that you want. No one's going to know what you want unless you say it. So open your mouth and say it, girl. You can learn anything, like I was just saying with the technical aspects. Never in a million years did I think I would be editing like 45-minute videos, doing sound setups, figuring out how to use a camera. I'm surprised I even got the camera on to film this right now because I'm by myself. But you can learn anything if you put your mind to it. Again, you just have to believe in yourself. And then lastly, I'll say it's okay to be picky. I think at points to my own detriment, I was really picky about what kinds of jobs I was applying for and where I kind of saw myself. Even when I was unemployed, maybe I would have been unemployed for a shorter amount of time if I had settled for something that I didn't really want to do. But I made the conscious decision to apply to jobs that were in theater, reach out to people within my community because I want to build on what I've worked for. And that's not to say that people shouldn't do other things if it's what they need to do to get by and to get to where they want to be. But also, don't be afraid to be picky. You just have to make the choice. You have to make a choice that works for you. I also wanted to say, I don't know, this probably would have been better to bring up before. I know that the podcast is kind of focusing on what commercial success looks like, and it focused specifically on Broadway and commercial work. I don't want people to feel like Broadway is the end-all be-all of a theater career in the theater industry, because it is not. It is absolutely not. The reasons why I really wanted to work on Broadway should be and can be different from someone else's reasons for wanting to be here. I know it's really seen as like the pinnacle of the theater industry, and in a lot of ways it is, and I agree with that. But again, I don't believe it's the end-all be-all. I think that we should be really transparent about knowing that success in theater does not have to mean being on Broadway. It does not have to mean winning a Tony. And yeah, I just wanted to say that because I can understand that the way this podcast functions, it puts a lot of weight on the idea of commercial success. However, I also think it's important to note that people of color, people from different backgrounds, people with different experiences haven't always been championed in this industry in the way that I would like to uplift them with this podcast. So covering their stories and talking about how they achieved success in their own way is also really important to me because of the kind of visibility you do get when you are working commercially, having commercial success, and being on Broadway. So I just wanted to put that out there. Okay, the last question. What is the future of How I Got On Broadway? I think this is a great question. The answer is I don't know. This is the last episode of season 1. I would love to see a second season, a longer season, and I'm sure that we're going to spend a lot of time in 2026 kind of figuring out what that will look like and doing fundraising and all of that. So for anyone listening, a step that you can take if you do want to see a second season of How I Got On Broadway is to donate. We have the link in our bio on all social medias. We have the link in our description if you're listening on YouTube or on Spotify. Click that link. I believe our link is givebutter.com/HIGOB. If you want to see a second season, hit that donate button, spread the word, send the podcast to people. We'd really appreciate it. Okay, that's all I've got. So I will hopefully see anyone listening in 2026. Thank you for listening. Thank you for engaging. We also have so much more content outside of the podcast episodes. We have our blog, we have our social media clips, we have our newsletter. So check all of that out if you're enjoying any of this and you want to learn more. Click those resources I was talking about. Keep up with us and we'll be back soon. Okay, thank you so much for listening. Bye.